let's cultivate our motivation. Again, have an awareness of our great fortune at having met the Dharma, having access to teachers and teachings, having the time and good health to be able to practice, having food, clothing, shelter, and medicine so that we can practice. And so let's not take this opportunity for granted, but really treasure it and make good use of it so that at the end of the life we don't die with regret for having frittered our life away in meaningless activities that don't bring us any genuine happiness now or later. And so let's generate a heart of compassion for all beings, ourselves and others, and therefore wanting to attain enlightenment as the way to bring about the happiness of self and others and remove all of our misery. So I thought today to start with talking just a little bit about initiation, because Rinpoche will be giving the White Tara initiation tomorrow, and some of you may have questions about that. And then from there we can have questions about today's teachings, and also tomorrow morning we'll be having another Q&A, so lots of time for questions then. Okay, so when we talk about Buddha's teachings, we often divide them into three vehicles. A vehicle is a consciousness that will take us to the desired goal. Okay? And so we have the fundamental vehicle that leads us to liberation out of cyclic existence. The great vehicle, or universal vehicle, the Mahayana, that leads us to full enlightenment. And then as a branch of the Mahayana, we have the Vajra vehicle that contains special techniques for attaining enlightenment quickly. Now, these three vehicles build on each other. No, they're not three separate ways of practice. Sometimes in America you hear, oh, there's three different traditions. There's Vipassana, Zen, and Vajrayana. First of all, Vipassana is not a tradition. It's a meditation technique that's found in all Buddhist traditions. Okay. Second, Zen is one type of Mahayana, or great vehicle, but it's not the only type. There's Huayan, there's Tendai, there's many other kinds. And Vajrayana isn't its own practice separate from, the fundamental vehicle and the Mahayana, but it's a form of Mahayana. Okay? And so actually, to practice Mahayana, you have to practice it well, you have to first practice the fundamental vehicle teachings, which are actually included in the Mahayana teachings. And to practice Vajrayana, you have to practice the Mahayana teachings. Okay? So they really build on each other. In the West, we hear, oh, Vajrayana is the highest, it's the fastest, and so since we like everything quick, cheap, and easy, Give me the fastest, give me the best, because after all, I am the most qualified, highly distinguished disciple that's around. Which shows how, you know, stupid we are. Yeah. Okay. So this mind that wants the best and the fastest because we think we're the most highly qualified is a mind of arrogance, and it's not going to get us very far on the path. So we always have to practice where we are, and at the same time we can look ahead at the more advanced practices and learn them and gain some familiarity, but realize that we're not going to realize them if we haven't realized the foundation practices first. You can't build the roof of the house before you pour the foundation and build the walls. Some people may try, but their roof doesn't turn out very good. So, within Vajrayana, there's 4 classes of Tantra. You know, what's called action, performance, yoga, and highest yoga Tantra. So action Tantra is the beginning. It's the lowest, or we would say the easiest one. But it's actually quite profound itself, the meditation methods in that. To do some of those meditations, you have to take what's called an initiation. Now, the word initiation is confusing in English because there's 2 different Tibetan words that are translated as initiation. Oh, they mean different things, and when we say initiation, we don't necessarily know which of the 2 Tibetan words it means. Okay? So, there's the Tibetan word wang, which means empowerment, and then there's the Tibetan word jainang, which means like a permission. So the wang, or the empowerment, is when you enter the mandala of the deity. The mandala is the environment of that deity. And the jainang is something shorter and simpler that's a blessing of the body, speech, and mind of the deity. When then there's a lot to say and how to tie it all together. Yeah. So actually, before taking initiation, we need to have received refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. We don't even take precepts or bodhisattva vows, let alone tantric initiation, if we haven't decided that following the Buddha's path is the way we want to go. Okay, so first we have to take refuge and know that the Buddhist path is the one that we've chosen, that we trust, that we're going on. Okay, and then as it's good to train first in some of the 5 precepts before you take Vajrayana initiation, although it isn't required. Okay, so the 5 precepts are to abandon killing, stealing, lying, unwise and unkind sexual behavior, and intoxicants. And those are the very, very gross actions we do with our body and speech. So they're actually the easiest ones to manage. And they're already kind of difficult, aren't they? Yeah, anybody here who's never done any of those 5 in your lives? Anybody here who's never killed, never stealed, never had unwise or unkind sexual behavior, never lied, never taken intoxicants? Okay, so we can see already this is, you know, a training to do, isn't it? Yeah. And this, like I said, it's dealing with very gross physical and verbal actions. When you go to the Mahayana vehicle, then you take the Bodhisattva vow, and that involves physical, verbal, and mental actions. So those you can transgress sometimes simply by the way you're thinking without saying or doing anything. Okay? And so our mind always lies behind our physical and verbal actions. That's why the physical and verbal ones are easier to control, because the mind is, the one that motivates it. So there's a time lapse between the intention in the mind and then it coming out of our mouth or our acting on it. We don't often notice that time lapse, but there is one. Okay. And then based on doing the Bodhisattva practice and the training in the 6 far-reaching practices and generating bodhicitta, then we go into the Vajrayana, and there you take the tantric vows. But the tantric vows only pertain to the classes of yoga and highest yoga tantra. You don't take the tantra vows in action and performance tantra. So the initiation that Rinpoche is giving tomorrow is actually a Jainang, and it requires having refuge, and then we'll take the Bodhisattva vow as part of the Jainang, but not the tantric vow. Okay? With regards to the Wangs or empowerments and the Jainangs or permissions, when you take a Wang, that gives you the ability to do what's called the self-generation practice, which means that of whatever deity, whose mandala you've entered, you are now empowered to, on the basis of generating renunciation and bodhicitta, dissolve yourself into emptiness in the sadhana or meditation practice, and then imagine your wisdom consciousness appearing in the form of the deity. Okay, so that you're empowered to do if you've received the Wang of the deity. The Jainang, okay, with the Jainang, it's a blessing of the body, speech, and mind of the deity, and with that you can do the front generation of the deity, imagining, in this case, white Tara out in front of you, okay, and then making requests and saying mantra and so on and so forth. If you have received a prior Wang or empowerment into, let's say, the Chenrezig practice or any of the highest Yoga Tantra practices, then if you take the Jainang of an action Tantra practice, such as White Tara, you are allowed to do the self-generation. But if you have not taken the Wang of another deity, then the Jainang does not qualify you to do the self-generation, but like I said, you do the front generation with Tara. So in the red book, the red prayer book, there is the front generation practice of Tara that we put there, presupposing that most people have not, have not received the necessary things to be able to do the self-generation. However, I know some of you have been practicing for a while, have received Wangs before, and thereby when you do this, will be qualified to do the self-generation practice. And so I'm typing up, well actually Lisa kindly typed up, and I'm doing some editing on a sadhana, a self-generation sadhana practice for White Tara. Now all these different tantric deities are the same nature. Don't think of them as different people, okay? It's not pantheism. Because first of all, we don't believe in one God, let alone many of them. Yeah, but rather these deities are appearances of the mind of wisdom and compassion, appearances of the omniscient mind. Because we don't have the ability to communicate directly with the Buddha. Okay, so the Buddha communicates to us through manifesting in these form bodies, and so we get these different deities. They all have the same realizations. They all have the same nature, but the physical manifestation is communicating to us some special kind of quality. In the case of White Tara, it's long life. Okay, so she communicates all the enlightened qualities, and especially long life. For Manjushri, it's communicating all the enlightened qualities and especially wisdom. For Maitreya, it's all the enlightened qualities and especially love. For Chenrezig, it's all the enlightened qualities and especially compassion. For Medicine Buddha, it's all the enlightened qualities and especially healing. Okay? So Tara, hers is long life. Okay? Now, to have long life, we have to purify a lot of negative karma. So the teachings we've been receiving this week fit very well with doing the White Tara practice. Because long life isn't just, why don't you come sit here? It isn't just praying White Tara, I want a long life. Okay, it's creating the causes of doing this, and to do that, we have to purify our negative karma, and then, you know, cultivate our good qualities. Okay, so the white color of Tara, you know, represents a lot of purification. Yeah, she's sitting with her legs in the Vajra position, indicating stability. Her right hand is on her knee in the gesture of supreme giving. Okay, so reaching out, tugging us out of samsara as we resist, saying, but, I'm sure someday I'm going to find real happiness in samsara. And she's pulling and pulling, trying to get us out. And then her left hand, the thumb and ring finger touching. This indicates the two truths, and then the three fingers upright are the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, the three jewels. She's holding a lotus that has, a blue lotus that has three parts to it. One is a flower, one is a bud, which represents the Buddhas of the future who have not yet come. The next is a flower that is opening, representing the present Buddhas. And then the third part is a fully open flower, representing the Buddhas of the past. Okay, so the Buddhas of the three times. She's wearing silks and ornaments, okay, not because she's vain, but the ornaments in particular represent the 6 paramitas, or far-reaching practices: generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, meditative stabilization, and wisdom. Okay? And, you know, she's adorned, she's wearing ornaments, like I said, not because she's vain, but it's showing that what adorns her, what makes her beautiful, is her spiritual practice. Not like the rest of us who, you know, kind of have to curl our hair a certain way and deck ourselves out. Okay? And she's sitting on a lotus and a moon disk. It's a flat moon. The lotus represents renunciation, the moon bodhicitta. And then around her is our, I guess you would call it halos. You know, sometimes they say it's like a moon in the back that she can lean against, but I don't know about that. And she has the third eye here, and she also has eyes on the palm of each hand and the palm of each foot, the sole of each foot, so 7 eyes. Okay. What else is there to say? It's a very, very beautiful practice. There's one mantra, Om Tari Tutari Tari Mama Ayapuni Jana Pushtum Kuru Soha, which is the increasing mantra, okay, asking Tara to help increase our merit, Ayapuni Jana Pushtum, our merit, wisdom, and life. Okay, and then also when we do the sadhana, the practice text, we recite the 10-syllable mantra, Om Tari Tutari Tari Soha. And you can learn more about Tara in general from the book How to Free Your Mind, Tara the Liberator. Okay, it talks about a lot of these kinds of things and how That one talks mostly about green Tara, but a lot of it applies to white Tara as well. Okay, so what questions do you have about that? Yeah.
If you're meditating on a different deity, and you really enjoy that meditation, if you take this initiation, you have to stop meditating.
Okay, so if you're already meditating on one deity and you enjoy that, do you have to stop that in order to do this? No, the Buddhas get along very well. They don't get jealous if you add another Buddha to your practice. Yeah, so you can do two practices.
You can stick with your...
Oh yes, of course. In fact, you should stick with the one you're doing. Whatever Dharma practice you're doing that works for you, you stick with it. The idea is when you take like an initiation, you're adding more things onto what you're doing. So you have to be prepared to add more on. It's not like you drop something off to take the newest toy. Okay? And especially even if we're doing like one of these visualizations, we should keep doing the analytical meditation on the stages of the path. Okay? So these visualizations are done at our level to help us purify and accumulate merit. Okay? If you do retreat, you can learn some more of the advanced meditations. But we definitely need to keep doing the analytical meditations on the Lam Rim. And I really stress this because you meet some people, because the visualizations are quite nice and they make you feel good. And then some people just like to do the visualizations and it makes them feel good. But then I wonder, are they really practicing Dharma or are they just doing feel-good meditations? Okay? Because really to get anywhere in our practice, we have to understand the teachings, and for that, the analytic meditations on Lam Rim are crucial. And also to get anywhere in tantric practice, we have to generate renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom. So that's the Lam Rim meditations. Okay? So that's really important. Don't kind of drop those and think you're doing some higher practice. Okay? When we do the visualizations, it includes many elements of the Lam Rim, because we'll start out with refuge and bodhicitta. So when you do the sadhana, you meditate on refuge, you meditate on bodhicitta, you might do some breathing meditation to calm your mind. When you visualize Tara, you also have to think of her as being empty of inherent existence. So you have to generate some wisdom, meditate on emptiness. Okay, if you're visualizing light flowing from her into you, then you're meditating on karma, doing the four opponent powers. If you're doing the self-generation and sending light out to other beings, then you're also meditating on bodhicitta. So, doing the visualizations well depends on having a lot of knowledge of the Lam Rim path. Okay? Yeah?
If our relationship with tantric practices has included a lot of that kind of feel-good meditation, should we, how should we work with that? Should we just refrain from the practice?
Oh, okay, so if we're doing our tantric practice and we notice that it's feel-good meditation, do we stop doing it? No, we change our motivation. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with feeling good, okay? There is nothing wrong with doing your practice and feeling good after your practice. In fact, that's quite nice, isn't it? And it encourages you to keep doing your practice. What I'm talking about here is the motivation for doing the practice being one of just to feel good, not to attain enlightenment, not to purify our mind, not to develop other qualities. Okay, so you continue doing the practice, but you really work on your motivation for doing it. Okay? And you still, if you feel good, that's great. Yeah, some people get the idea that if you're really going to practice Buddhism, you have to suffer. And if you're really going to be a bodhisattva, you have to suffer. being happy isn't allowed. Where did we get that idea? Yeah? In Buddhism, you know, you want to feel good about what you're doing. Feeling compassion doesn't mean you have to wallow in misery to have love and compassion for others. Okay? This is quite important.
I'm just wondering if it's possible to request from the Rinpoche to give Wang initiation as well?
Is it possible to request him to give the Wang? No, I don't think so. Every time I've taken the white Tara, it's been the Jainang. So that's how it's usually given. Yeah.
I wonder what the commitments are.
What are the commitments? There will be the Bodhisattva vow, you know, where there's 18 root and 46 auxiliary. I don't know if he'll give a daily commitment or not. Often, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just give, you know, a mantra commitment, something like that. So maybe, Venerable Tarpa, you can check with him and ask.
For the tantric deities in general and tantric like practices, a lot of times there are like these kind of like terma things, and like practices are like revealed like that, and it sometimes seems like the connection historically to Shakyamuni Buddha is very vague or somewhat.
Okay, yeah. So in some tantric practices, there's things that are called termas, and they are certain teachings that are found by, supposedly they've been put in rocks or different places in nature, and then they're discovered by later practitioners. And so you're saying the link with Buddha Shakyamuni seems a little bit vague. Some traditions rely a lot on termas, others don't. Okay, this tradition doesn't rely a lot on termas. But for those that do, you know, it has to come, you know, the person who put it in there has to have some realization. There's different ways of validating that it's an actual practice. Yeah. I don't know too much about it, to tell you the truth. I haven't been involved in that so much.
If you're not going to participate in the initiation, are you allowed to be present?
If you're not going to participate, are you allowed to be present? Generally, no. Okay? But what we can do is, because we won't be videoing that, is we can set up and you can watch a video in the main house at this, you know, at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Okay? Yeah?
Is there any dress requirement? You know, when you took refuge, you normally have a white shirt.
Oh, okay. When you take refuge, you usually wear white. You know, when you do the initiation, any dress requirement, not especially. They say with white Tara, you know, to be clean. And when you do your daily practice of white Tara, it's a very good practice to do in the morning. Okay? And in general, on the day of the initiation, then you don't eat meat or onions, garlic, those things. And if you are not already vegetarian, you can eat meat, but after you do your daily practice. If you do white Tara as part of your daily practice, then you would do that early, and then if you ate meat, you would do that later in the day. But if you can be vegetarian, it's very good. But it's not a requirement. Well, this is according to how the Tibetans do it. Yes?
Something that's always confused me was the monks, you know, the monks that go to, you know, Sarah and Drepung and all that, and they go through their Geshe training, they don't really get any tantric training at that point, and it's only until they go to the tantric college, and not everybody goes to the tantric college, and so why do they give these jhanas when they don't do that with your own monks.
Okay, so with the monks who are doing the very rigorous philosophical studies to get their Geshe degree, they usually don't take tantric initiations, and they only go to tantric college after their Geshe degree, and not all of them do that. So why are the lamas giving tantric initiations to us who don't have nearly the level of knowledge and study as those monks in the three great monasteries? Well, okay,
Put you on the spot.
do we have to tape this? I think what they would say is to plant seeds in our mind stream. Okay, it plants seeds. It plants good seeds in your mind stream to be able to meet the Tantra in future lives. Westerners and many Asians request these things, you know, because we want the highest and this thing. And because there's actually a great deal of misunderstanding about Tantra. Because there's ritual in Tantra, people misunderstand and think the ritual itself has the power instead of the ritual being the thing that you meditate on so that you change your mind. And the changing of your mind by doing the meditation in the ritual is what really brings the benefit. But you know how people are, they like to grasp at external things. So many people grasp at external things. And in Tantra, you will see there's blessed water. We will have long life pills tomorrow. You know? People trample each other to get these long life pills. And same to get the blessed water, because it's the mind of ordinary people grasping at external things. And sometimes we ordinary people are so silly that we think that the less we understand, the more blessing we get. So you have, in many things, people going to initiations just to get the blessing. That's the wrong motivation. The motivation should be to take it because you want to do the practice, because you want to cultivate virtue, because you want to purify your mind. Not because you think somebody bonging you on the head is going to make you enlightened. Okay? But, you know, people have this kind of grasping at externals, don't we? People, you see it all the time. And Westerners are no exception. And so lots of times they request these things and want them for that reason. Okay? Also, many people will come to initiations, and not as many people will come to teachings, because there's this misconception that you get this big blessing. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama is not at all happy with that. He says people should come to the teachings, more people should come to the teachings, and fewer people to the initiations. But the initiations draw in a lot of people and everything that comes with having a big audience. Okay? So, but when they're studying in Sera, Ganden, Drepung, they don't do these things so much because they really want the monks to focus on their studies and not be doing, you know, these kinds of practices which take time. Mm-hmm.
I noticed that White Sadhana doesn't have the seven limb prayer and the mandala.
You can add it.
Just
Yeah, add it in. Add the seven limb prayer. Add the mandala offering. No problem. Tara's not going to say, "Look, Tracy, you're creating too much virtue. Cut that out." Okay.
So with the explanation of tantric initiation being given to people, what about here for us who also don't have such a philosophical training and
Yeah. Okay. So advice for us here who don't have the philosophical training. I think if you have some understanding of renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, and you are determined to keep the bodhisattva vows, then I think it's fine to take it. Okay? What I recommend doing, though, is, because he probably won't give a lot of commitments with this, is there's other initiations where you really have to take a lot of commitments. If you take a lot of commitments to do the sadhanas, then you have less time to do the Lamrim meditation. And I would advise not taking things that require a lot of commitments, at least not at the beginning, but spend your time, these kind of lower class action tantra practice is a very good way to start. The sadhana is short, it's not too difficult. You don't have tantric vows and succession guru yoga, and I don't know if he'll give a sadhana commitment. Many times they don't. Okay? Yeah. Yeah.
Any suggestions on books to read other than, we have some things in the red book?
Yeah. I would say read Lama Yeshe's Introduction to Tantra. Okay. Read How to Tame Your Mind, Tara the Liberator. You could read the Chenrezig book too. Because the steps in the Chenrezig meditation you can also do if you're doing the white Tara self-generation. You would just do those steps with white Tara instead of with Chenrezig. His Holiness has a book called Deity Yoga that's quite good, and I think Deity Yoga is about action tantra. Either that one or Tantra in Tibet. I can't remember which one's action tantra and which one's other things, but one of those. Okay. You have questions about today's teachings? Yeah.
I have a question about the karma. So in the Prasangika philosophy, this disintegration of karma, how it's carried forward, I thought he said that the cessation continues on and preserves the karma.
Okay. Okay. So, there's this big question that all the Buddhist philosophical tenet systems have to answer, which is the cause happens, let's say, in one lifetime, and the karmic result happens, the causal action in one lifetime, the karmic result in many lifetimes after that. What connects them? How does cause link to result? Okay, so this is the big question, and each philosophical tenet school has a different way of answering it. So he was saying that with the Vaibhasikas, what they say is there's this factor called non-wastage, which is like an IOU. Okay, it's actually, it's an abstract composite. It's an impermanent thing, an abstract composite. And it's, like you did the action, and so you have the IOU paper, and at some point, you collect. Yeah, that's the analogy they give. Yeah. Then the Sautantrikas, Sautantrikas and Svat-tantrikas say that there is a karmic seed that is placed on the mental consciousness. Okay? And so there's this idea of a seed. Yeah? You do an action, there's a seed, a positive phenomena that remains after that action. And what carries that is the mental consciousness, which is the person, according to them. Okay, these tenet schools. Okay, then the Chitta Madra, mind-only school, they say that there's a seed, but it's put on the mind, what they call the foundation consciousness. And this foundation consciousness is, most of the schools believe in 6 consciousnesses, our 5 sense consciousnesses and the mental one. The Chitta Madras add two more, this foundation consciousness and then a diluted foundation consciousness that regards a diluted consciousness, I'm sorry, that regards the foundation consciousness and thinks it's a self-sufficient, substantially existent person. So this idea of a foundation or storehouse consciousness is, this is the job of that one consciousness. Because you see, the mental consciousness changes all the time. It's not stable. So the Chitta Madhyans say you can't say that the seed goes on the mental consciousness, because there's different levels of mental consciousness and different kinds, and it's not a stable thing. So the storehouse consciousness is this stable thing, and you just put the seeds there and they're protected and they go with. Okay? Now the Prasangikas look at all of this and say, all this talk about seeds sounds a little bit substantial, like these inherently existent seeds, that are placed on an inherently existent foundation consciousness or an inherently existent mental consciousness, or this non-wastage which is inherently existent. And the Prasangikas say, look, you don't need to posit all these inherently existent things to connect cause to result. Okay? And then they give what this thing called Zhigpa. Okay? It's, in Tibetan, you would call it Z-H-I-G-P-A, Zhigpa. And today he was translating it as disintegration or cessation. Actually, that it's better to translate it as the having ceased. Is that a gerund that you're making into a noun? Who knows English grammar? The having ceased of an action. Okay? So some people say disintegratedness. No, it's not a good translation. It's the having ceased of an action. So there's an action. I'm talking. Okay, my talking ceases, right? Okay, now what's going to connect what I say now with whatever motivation I say, which positive, negative, or neutral, hopefully it's positive, with a result in the future? How does that connect? Okay, well, the action stops, but what the action produces is the having ceased of the action. And so that's why this morning he was saying there's dying and there's death. So dying is the ceasing of the action and of living, okay, is the ceasing, and death is the having ceased of life. Okay, so dying is the ceasing, death is the having ceased. So the same way with actions, we have the disintegration or the ceasing of the action, and then we have the having ceased of the action. Okay? So you can't see a having ceased. Yeah, that's why seed sounds so nice, We think of there's this little kind of pumpkin seed, and inside it is my virtuous action. That's the way we think of it. Yeah. No, there's nothing physical there. Yeah. So there's the having ceased of the action. And of course, that having ceased, being a functional thing, it's not permanent, it changes moment by moment. So as it goes through, as it ceases itself, it produces another having ceased. And so there's this continuity of one having ceased after the other until you get to the moment where other cooperative conditions come together, and that having ceased brings the result of the karma that was created however long ago it was created. Okay. Now the difference between saying a seed and a having ceased is that a seed is a positive phenomena, and it's very easy for us to think of it in a material way and to hold it as something truly existent. A having ceased is an affirmative negative phenomena. Okay? So a negative phenomena or a negation is the absence of something. Okay? Now there's some absences where all you do is negate something. There's no elephant here. There's other absences where in negating something you imply something else. Yeah? And here the example they give is the fat person doesn't eat at night. It's implying that he eats during the day. So that's an affirmative negative or an affirmative negation. Whereas just saying there's no elephant in the room, it's just you're denying the elephant. So in having this having ceased, okay, what you're having the absence of is the action, because the action has ceased. But what's being affirmed is that the action happened. Okay? So because this action happened, it's going to bring a result later on. Okay? Takes a little bit of thinking about to get it.
The question is, what do they base this having ceased and ceased?
Okay, what did they base it on? He was saying on scripture and on reasoning. So the scripture is that part in the 12 links where you say, what was the quote he gave? I wrote it down. Something about birth leading to death. What? Yeah. Yeah. When birth acts as a condition, there's aging and death. Okay, so that's in the 12 links. Birth is the coming into being of something. Aging and death is aging is the disintegrating. Death is the having ceased of it. Okay, so that was the scriptural quotation. And then for the reasoning, I think just basically the explanation that I just gave, that something ceases, is in the process of ceasing, but after it has finished ceasing, there's the having ceased of it. Okay?
And then the coming back of that.
Well, no, the having ceased, when it comes with other cooperative conditions, then it produces the result. Okay?
And that may take the time
in between.
That may take whoever knows how long, because some karma may ripen in this life. A great deal of our karma will ripen in future lives.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So
Okay?
could birth then be a having ceased, the having ceasedness of birth would be part of the production of the aging and death? Would that be a way to think about it? The birth is done, it's...
Yeah, well, birth comes, and from the moment after birth, birth is the arising. From the moment after something arising, it's disintegrating.
Right.
Just as we're born, and the second moment we start aging.
So has the birth ceased?
Yeah, the birth has ceased.
Is that having ceasedness part of this?
Well, the birth is. Yeah, I guess you could say. I guess you could say the action of birth has disintegrated. There's the having ceased of the action of birth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of like the idea of disintegration, but because I thought, well, if things disintegrate after an action, the parts of the action, then they reintegrate or integrate again into the produced karma.
The karma is the action. Karma means action. Sometimes we use the word karma to mean the seed, sometimes the result, sometimes the disintegratedness. Actually, the karma is the action itself. Okay?
But the idea that the parts of the action disintegrate and then reintegrate into a...
No, when something ceases, the words I said 5 minutes ago, they stop, didn't they? Okay? Do they have no effect whatsoever? Sometimes I wonder. Hopefully. There's some effect. Sometimes there's an immediate effect, okay? But sometimes, you know, when we're talking about karma, there's going to be a karmic effect, but that karmic effect isn't going to happen as soon as the words stop. So there's this having ceased of the action that continues. But you can't see a having ceased. Can you see death? You can't see death, can you? But death is the having ceased of life. And it's a phenomena. It exists.
So this sounds to me a little bit like the difference between a field effect and a wave. Because talk about this a little bit.
Okay.
And, you know, the Svatantrika and the Vaibhashika and the Sautantrika, you know, the pre, including and the mind only, they seem to want there to be kind of like a wave effect. In other words, there has to be a medium for the effect to exist, like sound. Sound only happens if there's molecules to move, and then they impinge your ear. If you try to make a sound in a vacuum, you get nothing, because there's no medium for the sound to travel in. But there are things that are field effect, like gravity and magnetism, which need no medium in order to happen. They just happen, and there's no you have gravity in a vacuum. You have magnetism.
I thought on the moon you didn't have gravity.
Huh?
It's
very slight gravity. Gravity exists everywhere in the universe. And it exists, and the effect that you feel is based solely on the mass of the object and the proximity.
But if there's a vacuum, then there's no mass, so how can there be gravity?
If there's a vacuum, there's mass. Mass exists. Mass exists in space. Everything has mass. There's no weight, but there's mass. Weight is a force, and a mass is just a mass. So what I'm saying is, so the Prasanghikas realize that you don't actually need a medium to have a cause and effect. There's no necessary medium. You don't need to postulate an underlying.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Medium,
Yeah.
a consciousness or something to carry it.
Right.
It just happens.
Right.
Like gravity or magnetism. It doesn't need something to move it from one place to another. There's no particle moving from here to there like sound. It just...
Yeah, maybe something like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when we're purifying the having ceasedness.
Not the nest, the having ceased.
Yes.
Yeah, we're purifying the having ceased. We're impinging on the having ceased so that it can't ripen, or so that its force in producing another having ceased is not very strong. Okay.
So why doesn't Buddha create karma?
What?
Why doesn't Buddha create?
Because karma, when we're talking about karma here, it's created under the force of ignorance, and Buddhas don't have ignorance. However, they do have what's called enlightened activity. Yeah, because the Buddhas act, so they have enlightened activity.
how does karma expand then? The results of karma expand.
Yeah. You know, they say a lot of this only Buddhas understand. So I'm going to rely on that one. Yeah? But I think the idea is that if a karma is created and it's not purified, it gestates in our mind, you know? The force just kind of, you know, like ruminates and gets stronger. Yeah, and also it increases in force if you do something very often. So it's kind of like having a whole lot of having ceased teaming up together.
Back to yesterday's question on breathing as an indication that there was a previous life. I didn't understand the answer, and I don't know if there was one.
Oh, okay. You know, I had never heard this thing about the Wangpo and the breath being a reason, so I don't understand it either. Yeah, I mean, those are clearly two things that distinguish living beings, but the argument didn't seem real clear to me. Okay, the first argument about consciousness needing a continuity, that one is very clear, and that one makes a lot of sense. You know, if when talking about the sense faculties, you include the mental consciousness in one of the sense faculties, but then that seems like you're just repeating the one about consciousness having a continuum. So I don't know. That's something we have to investigate some more.
Good enough answer for me.
Yeah. I don't know is the profound answer. I just took a lot of words to say it.
So my understanding is the star's consciousness is the alaya, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and then.
And only the Chittamadhyans accept that.
The alaya, and then the other one has the substrate.
Yeah, well,
so what?
I had never heard that thing of substrate. Yeah, I usually hear it's placed on the mental consciousness. So I think Svatantrika say a subtle mental consciousness, so that could maybe be. We have to ask what that word means.
Yeah, that was a new one for me. So
yeah, yeah, I had never heard that either.
Maybe Guy would know since he's been talking about it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was wondering about how if we need to use the understandings of the Four Noble Truths and what was the other one? Emptiness, I think, to get to a point where because we can use inference to understand those, then we can believe that the
right.
is valid and believe in karma, but karma is part of the second noble truth, the truth of origin.
Yeah, right.
Emptiness is
okay. Yeah. Okay, so you're saying because Dharmakirti was saying if you understand the Four Noble Truths, then, that makes sense, then you can infer from that the Buddha knows something, that he's a reliable teacher, and then infer that some of these other things that are harder to understand actually do exist. Okay? The thing about cause and effect, karma and effect in general, I don't think that's a very hidden phenomena. Cause and effect we know by reasoning. We know some of it by direct perception, don't we? Seeds grow into sprouts. Okay? That a specific cause leads to a specific result. You know, like what action you did in a previous life so that you're here in this room right now, that's something only the Buddha can see. Yeah. But I got sidetracked. Oh, so you were saying the karma is part of the Four Noble Truths, so aren't we kind of going around in circles? I think he didn't mean that you have to understand everything about the Four Noble Truths to get a feeling that the Buddha is a reliable teacher, but rather you can see, you know, we have dukkha, and the origin of dukkha, you know, we can very clearly see afflictions produce dukkha, okay? You know, and we can see that our actions produce misery as well. Yeah? And then we can see that that it's possible if you cease the origin of dukkha, that you can cease dukkha, and you can cease the origin because the origin, the foundation thing, is ignorance, and ignorance grasps things to exist in the opposite way from how they actually exist. So if you generate the wisdom that sees things as they exist, then it overpowers the ignorance. When ignorance falls, then so do afflictions, so do the polluted karma, and then the dukkha stops. You know, so that takes a bit of a study and understanding, but if you get some conviction about that and it makes sense to you, then you can say, oh, you know, the Buddha kind of knew something that's really important here, and I think I can trust his description of some other things that are not as easy to understand. But Aryadeva, the quotation from Aryadeva, he was saying if you understand emptiness, okay? And of course, emptiness comes in the third noble truth. Yeah. But I think the one of understanding emptiness, that's even better, because emptiness is something we can understand. It's a slightly hidden phenomena. We can understand it through reasoning and logic. So if we can understand that, yeah, and then know that the Buddha taught that, then we can assume he's a good teacher who knew what he was talking about. Okay? Yeah, there's so many things that hinge upon understanding emptiness. Yeah? You know, because if you understand emptiness, then doubt ceases. Yeah? Then you have, you know, kind of firm confidence in the Buddha as being a reliable teacher. Then you have firm confidence in the three jewels as your objects of refuge. Yeah, and so that's why, you know, as we're developing on the path, all these things are things that grow slowly. You know, we're not going to gain an understanding of emptiness quickly. We're not going to gain an understanding of rebirth or of even compassion quickly. All these things are things that take a long time, you know, of really thinking about, familiarizing our mind with it, looking at it from different angles, applying it to our life, really, you know, working with the stuff. Yeah, and then you can see in your own experience that what started off as a very simple understanding, maybe even not a correct understanding, maybe because I'm kind of fuzzy-wuzzy, half correct, half incorrect understanding. As you study, as you reflect, as you meditate, that understanding becomes clearer, it becomes more subtle, it becomes more detailed. Yeah, and it becomes firmer in your mind. But it's something that we really have to engage in practicing for that to happen. Yeah, so you can pay people to mow your lawn, but you can't pay them to eat for you. Yeah, and you can't pay them to do Dharma practice for you. It doesn't work. It's one thing we have to do ourselves.
We can dedicate our minute to it.
We can. Okay, yeah.
The having ceased, in the example of karma that was brought up, is what is affirmed is the action?
Yeah, the action having happened. The action happened. Yeah. Because otherwise, you know, we say the absence of the action, that's negating something. But it's, you know, after I speak, let's say, for example, let's say there's silence, okay? Now, that silence, there's difference from it, of that silence being with somebody having spoken and then there being silence, and somebody never having spoken and there being silence at that time. The fact that somebody spoke influences, you know, makes that silence different. Okay? So that's why it's an affirmative negation. Is what the action have ceased. Yeah, the action stopped. So it's the absence of the action. The action, but the action did happen. It's not that nothing happened. Yeah. And that's why we say that karma will bring result. Even though the action ceased and it doesn't exist now, we can't say, well, it's not happening, there's nothing there, it's just like empty space, so my actions have no ethical dimension at all. We can't say that. Okay, this will be the last question.
What is it that connects karma from one life to the next? Is it consciousness or?
Well, you know, with the having ceased, you know, I don't know if they even say that the having ceased. I don't even know if you need to say it's on the mental consciousness or not. You know, but there is a continuity of consciousness from one life to the next. Okay. However, that consciousness is always changing. It's not permanent, and it's not a person. Okay? But, you know, you have to have a continuity of consciousness for karma to bear a result. Yeah, so there's some relationship between the consciousness and the having ceased of the action. Because we also only experience the having ceased of actions we created, not of that other people do. Yeah. Okay.
That survives in this life. I mean, life's always changing, and yet karma still follows you. So it would seem like it stood to reason in the Buddha that it would.
Yeah, there's one moment of consciousness always following the next. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that consciousness is not a person.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Or you could be a woman next time or something. If you're a man.
Okay, so we're going to dedicate. This merit may we soon attain the enlightened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. And may the precious Bodhi mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.